All right. Welcome everyone to today's webinar, Beyond the Estimate, Connecting Cost, Schedule, and Risk for Better Outcomes. I'm Jan Beran, Senior Implementation Specialist with Beck Technology, and I'll be your host for today. First off, a big thank you to all of you for joining us. We have a fantastic session lined up diving into how today's pre-construction teams are more than just estimators. They're connecting cost, schedule, and risk to drive better project outcomes. Before we jump in, though, let's cover a couple of quick housekeeping items. This session is being recorded, and we'll send out the recording to all registrants after the webinar. Also, we'd love to hear from you. If you have questions during the presentation, please enter them in the chat box, and we'll do our best to answer them during the Q&A at the end. Now let's meet our amazing panelists. First, I'm thrilled to welcome Garrett Vance, Senior Industry Specialist at Join. Garrett works closely with pre-construction teams to enhance collaboration and decision-making by connecting cost data to real-time project insights. He brings years of experience in construction technology and understands the challenges teams face in balancing scope, budget, and risk. Also joining us is Nicole Waits, Senior Director of Pre-Construction Advancement at Ryan Companies. Nicole is a highly respected leader in the pre-construction space with extensive experience in optimizing pre-construction processes, integrating technology, and ensuring teams have the right data to make informed decisions early in the project lifecycle. Now, Nicole, for those who aren't aware of who Ryan is, can you give us a quick snapshot just so they understand like the magnitude of your
Yeah.
job?
Yeah, thanks, Jan. Excited for this. Good to see you again, Garrett. Nicole Waits here with Ryan Companies. So for context, to help those of you that are listening in, Ryan Companies is about a $4 billion construction commercial real estate company. We are a national company with offices all across the nation. And our market sectors are primarily housing, industrial, national build-to-suit, things of that nature. And when I speak to kind of that commercial real estate company that we are, what I mean by that is we offer capital markets in-house, development services in-house. We have A&E services. We do the pre-construction and construction, and we also manage those assets long-term through property management. So we're kind of a full from start to finish group, for context for those of you that are listening in.
That's awesome. So in short, if you're listening and you're part of the pre-construction space at all, there's something that Ryan is doing that they can relate to. That's great. So today's discussion is going to hit at the heart of a subject that I've personally been passionate about for quite some time, and that's what does pre-construction actually sell? Every job in the economy has a purpose, something it sells, a primary good or service. When you think about what the different disciplines in AEC sell, pre-construction is stuck between the idea and the reality. Architects provide solutions to both aesthetic and functional needs of a building. Engineers provide physical solutions to make the architectural plans possible. And our field operations teams, from the project executive down through the PM and trade laborers, bring that idea into reality over the course of months, sometimes years, and millions upon millions of dollars. Pre-construction stands in the gap between idea and reality and says, yes, we can do it, and here's how we know. We're selling trust to the entire project team that the ideas provided in the design can and will make it into reality. Selling that trust means we're not just estimators, though. We're data-driven strategists. And to that end, today's discussion is going to hit on things like addressing challenges, the challenges of siloing cost, schedule, and risk management, uh, brief discussion on strategies to better integrate those critical project elements, drawing on some real world examples of successful collaboration in the pre-construction process, and obviously the tools and technology that we have at our disposal to support a more connected approach. And so with all of that said, with all those introductions, with teeing this whole thing up, Garrett, would you mind just kind of taking it from here?
Oh, please and thank you. I planted something, Jan. If you wouldn't mind tossing up the McClemmy curve. So to
Yeah, you
kind of
bet.
set some of the context of what we're diving into to start, that siloed cost, schedule, risk, and that confidence that we're trying to build with everyone involved in our pre-construction team. If you've been around construction, you've probably heard of the McClemmy curve or a curve similar to it with McDonald's associated. I don't know, different names that start with a Mick. But It's a great summary of your ability to impact a project and the time of that project. So if we're looking at this, the x-axis is time throughout the duration of your pre-construction through construction, and then the y-axis is the effort slash the cost of decisions. So if you wait to the end of the project to make a change, it's going to cost a lot more. That makes sense, kind of straight line, bottom left, upper right. Now, the earlier you make a decision, the greater impact you can have. And the later you make a decision, kind of the smaller impact you can have. So upper left to bottom right. Our traditional delivery methods usually align with our bell curve and colored in blue in here, kind of center of that cross section. Now, as deliveries changed, as you aren't doing necessarily design bid build for every project, you're doing more collaborative with a DB, a CMAR, IPD, IPD Light. There are a lot of different types. When you shift to that more collaborative mode, you're moving that bell curve to the left for greater impact early on, more decisions being made early on for a greater amount of decision net total prior to your expiration point, which is the cross of the two paths there. Now, I'm tossing all of this out because of those different methods that we were talking about at the start. There are different technologies, there are different tools, there are different things that are now at our fingertips that enable us to make these decisions quicker, earlier on, with greater collaboration. So, with that, I kind of want to toss it to Nicole. What kind of processes have shifted that you guys have seen uh, throughout the last few years?
Yeah. I would say notoriously, we've seen a lot of improvement as far as technology and process change goes for construction. I think that's been prioritized over the last 15 years or so, is looking at platforms that help when we're under construction. And it's not until here recently that we've seen things like Join pop up, where we're now really getting the message that we should focus on before that, right? That early bell curve that you were showing, that there's an advantage, a significant advantage to spend more time in that phase and do so at a more cost-effective rate than when you're under construction, building the bike while you're riding it, which is what a phrase some of our pre-con folks use sometimes when things feel like they've just gone off the rails. And I think some of that is a testament to not necessarily having the right tools for the right job at the right time. So we've seen here recently, again, for context of those that are listening, we've been Destiny users for we're our 4th year in, and we've had a really slow and steady adoption of Join. We're in our 3rd year, I believe. Garrett, we met 3 years ago, I think.
Feels like yesterday.
And you talk about building trust. I mean, we're building trust with these platforms too, because it is tough to break habits that exist, and introduce change and introduce different ways of operating in the planning stage. So it's been a little bit of a journey for us. I mean, Garrett, we've worked together for about 3 years now, trying to get Ryan over that hump of really kind of embracing some of what Join has to offer, and in Destiny as well too. Even though we're 4 years in, we are not always at our best when it comes to using the technologies that we have, but we are far ahead of where we've been.
Yeah, that's great. And so, Nicole, you said you've been both Destiny and Join users for 3 years, and slowly kind of working, folding these different paradigms into your processes. Was there an impetus for the change? Was there a pain point, a point in time when leadership was just like, look, we need to be doing something different? And if there was, is there a story associated with that?
Yeah, so for us, our struggle was, or is still, right? Like, we haven't mastered it. If somebody has, please, chat in now. Is that even though we have all these services in-house, we still have some barriers. We still were hearing that different departments felt like they were working, or the opposite department was working behind a curtain. And then it was like, here's the number. And even, on the side, the planning side, the pre-construction side, the construction side felt like, okay, what's that budget we're trying to hit? to our own Ryan development team. And development would look at construction and pre-construction and say, well, what's in this number? And more importantly, what's not in this number? And so I don't think we're alone in that struggle. But the thing is, it was happening within our own company. And so that was kind of what set us off to look for something that could help supplement our process of being transparent and our process of being collaborative. Because what we noticed was that Destiny is a great tool for its job, right? You got to have the right knife for the job, the right tool for the job. And so we were seeing that, Destiny brought us a lot of value in having our estimators work more efficiently, but we never were able to really share what they were doing. And so when we looked at the opportunities we had in the market for collaboration, we had identified Join and went that direction. And so we are now kind of able to start to put the pieces together around how everybody views things. And Jan, I don't know if you can put up that little, mine's a cartoon. Garrett, yours is very studious, but my contribution to this is a cartoon. So if you want to flash that up, that the conversation we were hearing from our leadership, from project teams, was everybody's seeing things differently, and everybody is got a different lens when we come to the table and we say what we want to build. This cartoon, if you haven't seen it, I think describes it pretty good. You've got the perspective of what the customer verbally said they wanted, and that's a little confusing. What got budgeted is that little string there. What the engineer designed based on their interpretation, right? And it continues on about really what the customer finally received and what they were billed for. And at the end of the day, they just wanted a tire swing. It wasn't too. We didn't even need the engineer. Just kidding. We always need the engineer. But this is the lens that we, this is a good summary of the struggles we were hearing, and the fact that teams needed a place to kind of pull things together and really just level set one another. Not just estimating needs to be under, the microscope, but the client too. It's like, say what you want, be clear about what's a yes and what's a no.
So Garrett, you've been along for the ride with Nicole for a while. Was there an aha moment where you just finally where you noticed or observed that Nicole finally gets it and is pulling all the pieces together, and we can actually make some real progress now? And if so, please tell the story.
Shoot, I wasn't kidding. It feels like yesterday. No, we were on a call when y'all started with Join. There was a process doc that you guys had. It was a big spreadsheet, and there was everything that you do, check the box, next tab. It was very systematic. And as we were going through, there was a moment where, like, light bulb, oh yeah, no, this is going to be great. It's going to be a shift. And that's what everyone continues to have throughout all of construction. Continuous shifts of process to come closer to meeting those expectations, hopefully getting a little bit closer from 3 slats to, at least a slat in the design and communication back and forth to go off of the cartoon. But I remember sitting down with the conversation with you, Nicole, and then seeing it with the teams as they're having that same light bulb moment of, oh, wait, what? And you get that
might
pretty
not
often.
need Excel? How dare you? How dare you?
You mean prior to a meeting, I don't have to sit down for 2 hours and redo the same report that I did last week. We can just have it live up to date. Like, oh, that's pretty cool. Yeah. Or it could be, oh, there are visuals that I don't have to go back and just double check. I know that they're right because of the information that we put in, and you just have confidence. And it kind of plays into, Jan, how you opened up. Building that level of trust with the owner also starts with building levels of trust with the different tools that you're using and confidence in how to use those. The greater confidence you have internally, the more you can express that externally and have that collaboration going back and forth.
Yeah. And on that note, right, as we mentioned, everybody's building trust. And so one offshoot of that is looking at your tools that you have in your toolkit, making sure you have the right ones, and building trust with them. And that was in this moment in time. There are so many things that can go wrong. Your biggest risks, honestly, I don't know if they are, what's the price of this one project? I believe the biggest risk you have is to fail at establishing that trust, because it's going to ruin your potential for repeat work. It's going to ruin potentially your reputation. You're really, if you get the price right, great. But what every pre-construction group is working towards is the ability to build a relationship with those clients. And so as we've adopted these tools, we've felt very safe and very, we've taken our time to make sure that the things that we are looking for are being met. But we've built some trust with Join and with Destiny. And that lets us and teams kind of put that aside, because to be honest, this is new, right? And so everybody's always afraid of being on that bleeding edge, and we feel really comfortable that this is not where we need to focus, folks. These are trusted tools, and so now we need to turn back to our clients and our design partners and our trade partners and say, okay, that is like the tools work. Let's all make sure we're optimizing the use of that. And I'll share a story, early on, Garrett, as you were helping us adopt Join. Um, we took it slow, and we had about 5 projects in there at a time. Um, Many of them started and stopped. We didn't even really get through that full life cycle, even in a calendar year. Um, and so there was a couple of projects that did. And 2 years in, behaviors really hadn't changed. Is that even though the tools had all this power, is that where we were actually struggling was we were still treating certain elements as we wanted to treat that Excel spreadsheet of like, here's the report. Would you like a copy? You can, like, I'll PDF it. The number of times people said, can I export this to Excel? I was like, oh my gosh, come on, guys. We went through that, and not because of that specifically, but those projects did not succeed. And they didn't end up moving forward. And there's multitude of reasons why those didn't move forward. But the mindset shift hadn't changed. And what we're really seeing is first projects where you're using these platforms are rocky, and people are almost looking for ways that maybe the tool will be wrong. Maybe there'll be a mix up in a formula. And there isn't. So they're just operating, okay, if I had a cost log, I'm going to put it in Join and have it there. And that's it. On the second project is where they start to see, like, oh, right. My aha moment that I had with you 3 years ago is like, okay, I get what we're doing here. I get how this information is evolving, how this information is transferable, how I could use information I had before, from previous projects. And then what we are now seeing, we're on a project that is, a third a third use case, with a repeat client. And now teams are just like, this makes sense. And understanding the ability to kind of reuse information, repurpose information. And I know when we were kind of planning this call, Garrett, you were sharing a story about your grandfather, about how the olden days worked. So why don't you go ahead with that while I stop
Oh,
rambling about how we've had our aha moment.
we got to be careful. I got to check time, make sure, because I'll go into a lot of stories. So, third generation builder. My grandpa ran a metal and GC shop with his brother, and when they'd like sign a contract, it was a handshake, and they deliver the keys, whatever amount of time it was, 12, 18 months down the road, and there weren't all that many updates throughout the process of construction. And then you look at today's construction, and it's I akin it to kind of the way that we do our shipping anymore. As a kid, I mailed in like a little cutout from the back of a catalog, bought a little Hummer RC car. Month and a half later, completely forgot about it, showed up on the doorstep. It's like, oh yeah, that used to be the way a lot of construction happened. There was a lot of time in between communication back and forth. Now it's almost like Amazon updates. You buy it, 24 hours later, it's on your doorstep. But more than that, you could see it 9 stops out, walk out to the mailbox and get it as the truck doesn't even stop, just hands it to you and keeps on rolling. It's, I think, very akin to how we see the processes change inside of construction. There's more involvement from all parties. There's greater amount of information, and there's a lot that rides on decisions that weren't ever considered prior to. It could be greater visibility into the longevity of any particular aspect of a project, whether it's your generator, your AC system. The lifetime cost of the building comes into factor. The install, the lead times, the tariffs that seem to become a pretty big word today. Like, how do we tackle that? How do we mitigate that risk? Well, traditionally the GC just owned a lot of that risk. Now it's communicated and you're going back and forth and coming up with greater plans to approach and diffuse. I call them ticking time bombs, but different ways that your project can blow up and explode. The processes have developed over time to meet those expectations, and I think surpass in aspects, but those expectations, they're never static either. What you did on your last project now becomes the baseline for the next project. So every time you reach forward, we're going to continue to develop and progress. But with that, there's the constant need to change and develop. So, Nicole, similar to what you guys were talking, well, exactly what you were talking about with the different project teams, that first project might have a little bit of mistrust around the implementation, the rollout, the tool. Okay, well, the next project, they have that trust, and it's going to push the boundaries of whatever tool they're using, whether it's structuring those estimates, the takeoffs. Shoot, I remember watching my grandpa do takeoffs with a slide rule, and then
And the light
seeing that
table,
progress.
maybe? Yeah.
Seeing the progress of having to have the ammonia stored in, that closet and taking shifts going in and out all the way to today where you don't even print it out. You do your takeoffs and you have that integrated into your estimate. And then you start talking about those conversations of quantities. Maybe you're doing reductions before a full set is even issued. It's really cool. Okay, I'm going to keep talking if we got a second. I
Really,
I grew
really
up.
quick, because I do want to.
Oh,
I got a
yeah.
couple questions for you, Garrett.
Oh, please.
Yeah. So you guys have set the stage really well for how the industry has kind of matured to look beyond the estimate, need information beyond the estimate, and need continuous updates. Can you, beyond just owners wanting more information about the cost or estimated timelines or the impact that tariffs are going to have, can you talk a little bit, Garrett, about the importance of kind of combining all these different project elements? Because I can hear the seasoned veterans. Back in my day, we just printed the estimate from an old Excel sheet and handed it to the owner, and then we were off to the races. But nowadays, it is a lot. There's a lot more information flowing during pre-construction. And can you just maybe briefly talk about why all of that has become necessary?
Oh, sure. The it goes into those expectations and what's been done in the past. I remember one of the first projects that I did as an estimator. We were measuring the baseline cost of the building, how we would expect to build it, and then they wanted to explore different options. One, to increase the schedule for delivery because the particular building needed use, and they're going to generate funds from that use. So if you could save a month and a half on building, that's going to save them costs. It helps them with the pro forma. So different structure types kind of feed into there. The second option they wanted to see is what is the cheapest we could build it. Well, that's a completely different structure and system. So your baseline estimate, you have to scrap quite a few aspects. And then the third one is your recommendation. If you were to wave that magic wand as your GC, how would you build it for constructability? And what does that offer? So you're exploring three completely separate paths. And for that, you don't have the time to go and build three completely from scratch brand new estimates. You're needing to pivot. Okay, what are the options? What are going to be the plug and play modules or ideas that are passing back and forth? I pull the structure out here and put the new structure here. Does that affect how our skin attaches? Yes, no, okay. So you're building a lot of kind of complex pieces that pass back and forth. And then inevitably, it's never, okay, let's pick one and just run with it. It's going to be, I like this. We're going to take aspects, but I also like these. Can they plug and play? Can we save on the generator system, but go with the skin system here? Okay, what are the gives and the takes? And it's a lot of that conversation of, okay, what actually works together in terms of constructability, what's recommended based off of timelines. And you start stacking a lot of those different delivery aspects that we were talking about, de-risking a project that becomes more risky with more options. So you want to communicate that, make sure that they're understanding of each step and process. Now,
Yeah. I
Nicole,
was going to add
have you
in,
seen that? Yeah.
well, so I've watched a team here recently. Everything you've described was very construction centric, right? And the language you're using is from your experience because you were an estimator and you know the terms and you care about the equipment that does this for the thing that. And I really think one of the benefits of creating collaboration and transparency is understanding your client. And are they as knowledgeable as you are, or are they also asking you and your company to help them? Because they might not know that the mechanical unit is this, that, and it affects this, and then we can't do this. And so here recently on that note, we've seen a team create categorizations that are owner vernacular friendly. And so instead of things that, right, like you just described the three scenarios you were trying to create, it was easy to do, easy to implement, medium to implement, and difficult to implement. And it wasn't as in the depths of it, but they were able to communicate with that client in a way that they get it. Now we also have clients who are right there, sleeves rolled up with us that don't need that. But that's the job of this group and this in this phase is to understand your client, understand how to get that communication going. Is it in a complex way because they want to know every inch of what's going to happen within their facility? Or is it in a, I'm here to take that load off your shoulders and communicate it in a way that you're going to get what you want at the end of the day? So your description there hits home with a real life example that we're watching right now. You've got clients that have all different levels of interest in being a part of this phase. And no matter what, pre-construction needs to get the job done. It's just how do they communicate that?
No, that's great. And recognizing the I don't want to call it expertise necessarily, but familiarity with jargon and processes that owners have really plays into it. Because when you can speak their language, they're gonna that establishing that trust and being able to make good decisions based on the information that you're providing is going to be that much easier for them. And that's an awesome little insight that I hope all of our listeners can latch onto, that they need to be thinking about how can we speak the owner's language, not just answer the owner's questions. Um, but Garrett, if I can double back really quick, you said something that really piqued my interest, and I want you to expand on it a little bit more. You used the phrase de-risking the project. Can you talk about that? Because I mean, yeah, we talked about value engineering and the different angles that we can approach value engineering. Is it just strictly cost, or is there a use case value engineering and those types of things? But de-risking and risk analysis is a whole different subject, and so I just want you to serve that up a little bit.
Oh, you're winding me up for a good one. I like it. Keep tossing me the softballs, Jan. I did it.
Go for it.
So when we're talking about risk on any project, the worst risk there can possibly be is one that's not seen because it catches you off guard every time. I first started talking about risk or learning about risk on projects in the safety aspect. And there's a process for mitigation of risk. Hey, can you engineer it out so the risk no longer exists? It's the same in a project. Hey, we've identified this risk, and it might be long lead on a particular crucial aspect of your structure. So it's not going to get there in time. Okay, we can't build the structure without this piece. Okay, can we engineer it out? Can we change the structure type so that we can allow for that risk to completely be taken off the table? Yes, no. Now, there are other risks that are going to be compounding. It might be risk for schedule. Uh, the last couple of years, at least in the area where I live, weather's been more and more unpredictable. And it's something that you accept when you accept a timeline with LDs and you're talking through, can we get it delivered on time? Do we have enough float through that schedule that we can make it happen no matter what? Yes, no. When you're bringing up anything that could hinder that project being delivered to the owner in the way that you said you're going to deliver it, is identified as that risk to begin with. Now, as soon as those risks are identified, you start mitigation plans. If you can get rid of it altogether, fantastic. Life, sadly, is not always that simple. And more often than not, you're setting up plans to reduce that risk as much as possible, eliminate if possible, and then have contingencies around different ways to pivot. That way you can communicate, hey, this is a project risk. We're all in this team together. I don't want to hide anything from you. This is what we're looking at. And this is our process to mitigate that. The more open you can be with your team, the better projects go. We're seeing it quite a bit with IPD. That kind of full team mentality is bleeding into design build. More folks are in it for the relationship, not necessarily in it for the individual profit as much, because a good partner is going to be a project in the future. So every time you have that communication around potential risks, you build some of that confidence, and it's a play. Anytime you don't deliver on a risk, it can eat away at some of that confidence. So being able to identify, mitigate, and eliminate risk is that de-risking that I tossed out. I think of it kind of like shrimp, taking off the shell. You try and eliminate any risk on the project, and any risk that you can't eliminate, you work towards reducing down as much as possible.
Yeah. And I'll speak from right. I'll step into our development shoes and our owner shoes at Ryan, right? De-risking from their perspective. At the end of the day, the number that is being generated in Join or Destiny is hard cost, right? That I need one number to punch into my performa to understand if my deal is going to pencil. I have a day job. I'm watching what the market is doing. I'm understanding what my capital is. I'm understanding what the makeup of my potential end user is, net what rents are, what operating costs are, right? And so I've got my own lens of things that are my risk as well. This number is definitely a big part of that. But it's one number at the end of the day. And so what I think has been a game changer for us to watch too is there's also this trade-off happening too of like as construction or pre-construction says like we're going to de-risk from our side is that we say, well, do you want to carry that or do you want us to carry that? And before having a platform like Join, it was hard to communicate that. It was really hard to paint that picture and say, hey, yeah, we talked about that. You're going to carry that. Or, hey, we talked about this. It had no monetary impact, but it had a schedule impact. And everybody came in, signed off on it, and said that this is what we wanted to do. And so those are decisions that are affecting carrying costs. Those are decisions that are affecting, your interest. They're decisions that kind of we had it in like this flat Excel experience that just didn't do the effort that was occurring around it justice. And so it's been really nice to kind of see teams also embrace that they feel more supported. They feel better at communicating what those risks are, because I don't think anybody sits down and says, I'm just going to deflect everything. And I don't think you'd be in business very long if your company was just after the bottom number. Everybody that gets a seat at the table is putting the project first. It had been really hard to do and communicate and show that until now.
That's awesome. No, this is great. I know this session, this webinar is not intended to be a show and tell. Let's see Destiny, let's see Join and how they interplay and do all that. But Garrett, can you talk a little bit about some of the technical aspects or some of the tools that Join provides that are helping facilitate this exchange of information, de-risking the project? Can you just talk a little bit about how some of this works?
Oh, definitely. So, Nicole, you just tossed out something that's very close to my heart, and it's who's going to cover the cost of this risk that we identified. Is it going to be an allowance that we're holding in the cost of construction, or is that going to fall underneath the owner's cost for a project total that summarizes? Inside of Join, you can separate those, tag them, and then whenever you get more information, you can pull from that bucket. So if we're carrying 150,000 for underground utility conflict that we know is going to happen, whenever it comes up and it's a $78,000 bill, we can have that item tagged. It'll pull from the bucket, and then we can have that discussion of, oh, hey, there's some money left over from this allowance. Is that something that we need to shift into one of our other buckets, especially in TVD where you have broken down areas and strategic contingency tagged to each of those? Okay, do we need to kind of shift buckets to better allocate now that we know more information in that particular area of the project? Allowing greater clarity and visibility into that information, along with kind of record keeping for those things that happen early in pre-construction and then communicating it to that team that's in the field later on. Fantastic. It's a game changer, in my opinion, of having that information available and then being able to pivot back and forth. Now, I'll take the opportunity to drop it. Coming real soon to a project near you. Wink, wink. There's a risk module that Join's going to be launching that's going to allow that communication across the team. So if your ownership team has risks that are specific to them, they can put it in that project and watch those risks, come up with a mitigation plan. They can tag the items that are attacking that plan. The general contractor can do the same. The design team can do the same. And then you can share risks in a company risk list as well, or a risk list just rolls off the tongue.
We'll let marketing name that.
I love it. No, the greater amount of clarity and visibility, it helps so much in understanding in that de-risking process, and also just keeping everyone on the same page, keeping them up to date. Because very often you can identify risks very early in a project, and then they kind of fade away after talking about particular scopes, timelines, that pro forma, having that information, that it fades away in the background until it becomes a problem again. So keeping it front of mind and allowing those teams to communicate back and forth about that.
Yeah, that's great. So Nicole, you talked a little bit about how Destiny Estimator allows your estimating teams to work efficiently, getting to the actual number or the estimates for the project. And of course, we have alternates now that we released last year that enables them to basically plug estimates within estimates for a lot of these different scenarios that have played out. And Join really comes in and helps the team communicate and assess these the different risks or the different buckets of risks. Can you talk a little bit about how the two platforms interplay with each other there at Ryan Companies, and how you guys leverage both to drive success in pre-con?
Yeah, when we initially started our journey with both tools, as I've said before, it was tough. And I think I don't want to say the easier one because they're all hard. Changing from Excel to Destiny Estimator was a comprehensible step for most. Not without, frustrations. But the power and the ability that it had to do things that we were just finding ourselves tripping up on in Excel was very evident in the adoption of Destiny. And that's where it fits. It's a powerhouse of data, historical costs, having a database that we can share across the country and within our regions, customize that, where people whose focus is drilling that number down, comprehending it, making sure we've got all the parts and pieces of that estimate in there. With Join, I was hoping it would be just as smooth. Maybe it was me. But where we've actually kind of created some awareness around is you've also got to have the right type of personality that wants to embrace Join, because there is a comfort in being in that estimate and kind of having to block out the world, because it's like coding to a degree, where you just say, I'm in this and this is where I do my work. I put on my headset and I jam out and I create this estimate. And when you are enjoying, your experience is the opposite of that. Um, it is very out in the open. The curtains are back. What you put in join, you know, some people have said you've got to be prepared to defend that, because the client could see it immediately and the architect could go, whoa, what are we talking about here with this new idea that came in? And that jostles some folks to kind of create some defenses. And so as we've worked to implement these, we've started to say, listen, these are meant to work in tandem, and they're meant to help us communicate. And so we start each project off with a kickoff meeting where we talk about kind of the rules of engagement and how this is shifting things, and how in the background, you're going to have a trusted, reliable estimate that's not going to get muddied up with all these ideas and these iterations and these options that we have. You've got a trusted estimate that's coming out of Destiny. And this is where we play. This is where we ideate. This is where we think through those risks for you. And so the tools, I think, somewhat crave different types of operators. And some people can do both, don't get me wrong. But we see that there is a little bit of a difference of wanting to be a little bit more of that customer liaison when you're operating in Join. And then we also see that there is some folks who are more comfortable, you know, not being put on the spot day in, day out, while they're trying to crank out those numbers and feel confident about what they're doing, because that's their job, is to manage their risk to get it right. So as we've watched these two grow side by side, you know, we're working through finding our rhythm and our cadence. In our third year, I think we are there. I think that they both have their purpose, and we don't use all elements at all times, right? It's also a matter of reading your client, understanding the level of engagement that they need, understanding the level of risk that you are up against, to find the right use case for both tools. But it's really valuable to have both.
Yeah. And no, that's great. And it's probably a bit of maybe comfort as well as concern for a lot of listeners here, to realize that it's taken Ryan companies 3 years of committed effort to get to a point where they feel like they've got it. And I mean, you're still in practice, you're still going to be improving. You don't have it all figured out by any means, but it does take time. It is a big paradigm shift. And what you talked about there kind of echoes what we're seeing in the industry as a whole, where we're seeing job listings and advertisements and people taking on different titles that are reflective of their roles in pre-con, where you have estimators or cost engineers or quantity surveyors across the pond, they're digging into the nuts and bolts and getting to those trustworthy numbers for cost, and sometimes even scheduling predictions. But we're also seeing this evolution of the pre-construction manager. This is the person that's going to the meetings. They feel more confident, you know, spitballing with project teams on, you know, what if we did that? What if we did this? And what's possible to bring the cost down or to shorten up the timelines? And Garrett, I know Join has a lot of functionality, and there's a lot of questions in the Q&A that, you know, they want to see it. But can you talk a little bit? I think you might have touched on it earlier, about the kind of the library of
Yeah.
lessons learned that Join offers to leverage for project teams to leverage.
Oh yeah. So yeah, there are a lot of parts of Join that I just get so excited about. I lose my words for a second. We have a part of the application called Items Library, and it acts as a repository of previous ideas on projects that have already come to pass. Now, it could be projects that are still in flight, but that ideas, been tossed out. It allows you to look through those previous ideas, find applicable, investigate, and then apply them to your project. So instead of having to reinvent the wheel on every single project, you can kind of stand on the shoulders of previous use or other giants in your pre-con department and take those ideas, start that discussion, because ideas are just ideas. When they're tossed out and that design team sees them, there might be the knee-jerk reaction of, oh, actually, that destroys our whole program in that area. But what if we did this? And that's what everything's kind of geared towards, starting those conversations, going back and forth, and then working as a team to find the solution for your particular project. And then that solution can be used to kind of kickstart the next discussion. And you can continually iterate and work through. And what we see very often is a seasoned estimator or pre-con manager has a list of those in the back of their mind for every project they step into. And they can just pull it out, just boom. This is what we've seen on the last 12 projects. I'd recommend we look at this, list of ideas that I have. But what's tough is a brand new estimator doesn't have that experience. But with a tool like this, they can have some of that information to pull forward and then start those discussions. And as they go through, they're going to gain a greater depth of understanding around why. And I highly recommend asking whoever's project you're pulling it from, hey, what is this? Could you explain it a little bit more for me so you understand the context? And then when you propose it, you can, be knowledgeable in that conversation back and forth. But instead of having to sit there and read through all of the plans and come up with the ideas brand new every time, it's a Kickstarter. It's something that really saves some time there.
Yeah. Can I add one little story about that library?
Please do.
Early on, we had 3 projects in there that were for a similar product type with a similar client. And we had a generator issue come up on one. And it was a sizable cost, 200,000, 500,000, something like that. And I was in these kickoff calls hearing about like, hey, we have this issue. And on that call, right, where we're new to join still, so it was kind of like, what do we do? The team was like, well, let's make sure we email everybody else that's doing these projects in 2 other places across the country. And immediately I was like, there's a solution for that here. We have this in the item library. We can incorporate it into these other projects to make sure we cover that cost for that client. And it was just such a quick win for the group, the team, to not have to go back into email and then call, right? Like they could easily transfer that information. And I think that's a game changer. I think it's a game changer for the new generation that's coming in that expects that Amazon service that's immediate and things are there for them to kind of get a leg up. It doesn't replace the experience that you gather over your career, but it gives you some starting point to be able to talk and ask questions, which is really what this phase is all about to get the best outcome you can get.
That's an awesome, like, hitting on what used to be individual knowledge, and you kind of had to know who to talk to within your organization to get that knowledge out of them for a project. I remember making the rounds through our project teams to be like, hey, you were on a project like this. Can you tell me, it was early on in my career, can you tell me everything you know about projects like this? Because I'm about to meet with an owner who I've never met with. And if I had had this this idea library tool available, it would have made my job, my ability to grow in my role that much easier. And I wish I was still in industry so I could use Join. I'll just put it that way. But we are running up at about 10 minutes left on the webinar clock. And so I did want to, there were a couple of questions here. There are a lot of questions about wanting to see a demo of Join or see how Nicole has employed Join in their organization. But we're gonna pass those on. So those who have asked those types of questions, we're going to go ahead and pass those on. We want to make sure that you get that experience, but for the webinar here, we're going to limit that. There are a couple of questions here, though. One is for you, Garrett. This one's probably going to be pretty quick. On our design build, this is coming from the participant, on our design build project with the DBE is using Join. It's working out well. The owner's team seems to struggle with using it as they're not familiar with it. Does Join offer training, maybe specifically for owners, participants in the project, or are there pre-recorded best practice videos you could forward to them?
Oh, that is a quick one. Yes, to both. So we have a success hub lining out kind of different teams and how they can interact and join. And that's part of what I do often is I'll hop on with a team and do a high level training for that ownership group, can do it for your design team, and kind of set out some of those best practices and what Nicole and her teams do at the start of a new project, setting expectations is what we encourage everyone to do. Hey, this is the tool and this is how we're going to interact within it. Because project to project, it can be different. There might be particular reports that you need on one that you aren't going to use on another. There might be ways of interacting and communication inside of an item on one that you won't use on the other. So I'll follow up and send some of those resources that are pre-recorded. And then we can also set up some trainings and hop on and walk through to make sure everyone's comfortable with it.
Awesome. That'd be great. Nicole, how do you have you seen these pre-recorded sessions? And I don't want you to necessarily throw Garrett under the bus here, but this could be a disastrous question that I'm just lobbing to Nicole. But how have the resources? How has Garrett been helpful for your project teams?
Out of this world. Number one, adoption of this platform has been 2 hours max. Understanding how it works, right? Somebody who wants to dive into the details. If you just sat somebody in a room for 2 hours, which we don't do, then that's all it would take for somebody to be up and running, which is phenomenal for the amount of time that these folks have. And then the support hub is there with every little piece, like when you want that type of learning, where you can read about things, you can search quickly. And then I don't want Micah to be, given out to others, but Micah is our customer success gal and she's amazing, available. I don't know how she does it. So really, no, I'm not being paid for this feedback. But it's been very refreshing to have a group that's as dedicated as they are to join.
T-shirts in the mail, Nicole.
Coffee mug as well. We got you.
Awesome. This question's for you, Nicole. What advice, and let's take a step back, big picture, pre-con technology. What advice would you give to organizations striving to continuously improve their pre-con workflows and fully leverage technological advancements?
Oh, that's its own webinar. I think it's a three-pronged approach, and we've been fortunate at Ryan to have those three prongs. First, it's people. You've got to have somebody who's dedicated to communicating with the people about what you are trying to change. It's somebody who's dedicated to process, like what tools do you need to change? What are we changing in the tool? What are we naming elements of the tool? What templates are we setting up, right? Process. And then the third prong, which is really where I kind of come into play, is data. And again, we are fortunate enough to have a group that helps us through the APIs that all these softwares offer to pull those things in and tackle. So when leadership says, we want to know why we're spending so much time on pursuits. We look at process, we look at the people, we look at the data, and we come up with a hypothesis of what's going right or what's going wrong and say, here's what we want to go change. So we are pretty fortunate to have that approach. I know not all companies can operate that way, but if you can look at it from those three lenses, no matter what you're tackling, you'll find yourself getting more traction, I think, than just trying a new tool and seeing if it works, or trying a new way of doing something. Is you want to be able to kind of complete that cycle and see if you really made any improvement along the way.
Yeah, no, that's great. I have a couple of thoughts on that as well, having led a lot of technological adoptions across my career. But Garrett, I wanted to kind of poke you on this same topic, not only from your own personal experience, but vicariously through a lot of the Join client base. what have you seen? Like, what are some of the keys to success, the ones that do it best? And can you share some of that with the rest of us?
Oh, definitely. There are always kind of standouts of what makes adoption successful. And Nicole kind of touched on it earlier. The willingness to adapt the process or understand some of those changes with uh, the biggest thing, a shared goal. Making sure that the tools fitting what their end result is the best outcome. Because if you grab a crescent wrench and use it as a hammer, it usually just ends up in a dented crescent wrench and a bent nail. But having everyone on the same page as to what the goal is really makes it easy in talking through how to use it. And kind of level setting that at the very beginning of any training is really helpful to understand the group and then how that tool fulfills it. Now, yeah, I think that's the quickest way to go about it. We could always dive in for another hour on kind of nitty gritty details, but yeah, having the same goal.
Yeah, and you kind of stole my answer there of what I've seen as far as the most successful adoptions in whatever endeavors we try to solve is understanding the problem before you go looking for solutions. What is it that you're trying to do? If you're just trying to acquire a new toy to play with, it's never going to pick up steam. And this day and age, cost is a factor for any technology that we pick up on our tech stacks. And so, slowing down, evaluating what the problem is that you're trying to solve before you start going looking for solutions is going to be like the first big step for any group of any size uh, to successfully push the needle forward on tech adoption. With that said, we've got a couple of minutes left, and I know we want to respect everybody's time. So, Nicole, Garrett, do you have any final words? Go forth and prosper type of comments. Good, Nicole. Why don't you go first if you have anything?
Yeah, I've enjoyed today. Thank you for having me. I think this phase has been underserved for far too long. I'm happy to connect with anybody that's joined this call for interaction or questions or any way to help us all move forward together. So feel free to reach out. Otherwise, you'll be in great hands with Jan or Garrett, I promise.
And Garrett.
Oh, yeah, I'll toss out there. If you got questions, Garrett at join.build, shoot it to me. I'll email back and forth. Or join.build is a website. We're always there. It's been an absolute pleasure. As always, Nicole, Jan, thank you all for the opportunity. I'm excited. Who knows? We might be doing this again sometime soon.
Love it.
It sounds like it. That sounds like you're going to be doing quite a few show and tells here pretty soon, Garrett.
Sounds like fun. I'm in.
I appreciate everybody's time today. And if you have any questions, pre-con related, technology related, whatever the case may be, we're the three of us are happy to share our thoughts and perspectives and experience to help push the industry forward. You can chase us down either through our respective employers' websites or find us on LinkedIn, shoot us direct messages, and we're happy to be a resource for you in continuing your success. With that being said, I just want to thank both the teams at Beck Technology and Join and Ryan Companies for helping put everything together today. And I hope that you all have a wonderful and fantastic first day of spring. Go ahead and go win your day.